Imagine an alien AI arrives offering a utopian paradise. No more war, poverty, or famine. Can humanity get out of its own way? I'm Space Admiral Candace,
I'm Shane, Space Cadet, second class.
and you are listening to Sci-Fi Book Pod. Today we're chatting about Rejoice, A Knife to the Heart by Steven Erikson with our visiting dignitary, Patrick Lugo, an artist and author of the acclaimed graphic novel series A Tiger's Tale, with an upcoming comic book. We'll talk about more about that at the end of the show. So welcome.
Thank you, Kandas and Shane. Glad to be here.
Fun fact, I used to live where Patrick lives now, so we've been catching up on the island. He lives on an island. We don't need to know
Yeah,
where, but
a little
I used
island
to live on the same island.
floating
So
in
much fun.
hyperspace.
Patrick, why did you choose Rejoice, A Knife to the Heart?
I think I chose it because it says so much about humanity, right? Like I'm a particular fan of the author Steven Erikson. I discovered his work through his truly epic 10-book fantasy series, the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I've read A Song of Ice and Fire. I've read a lot of other large fantasies. And so on the lookout for a new one, I found this completed series. It was such an epic journey to read through. I was just taken by it. So then when he released in 2018, a single book, right? This wasn't a series. This was just one book. I had to jump on it to kind of get a distilled taste of his writing and his point of view, right? The author is an archaeologist and an anthropologist, and he brings that to his writing. And so I really wanted to see how he would handle a first contact incident.
Yeah, it's really interesting that an archaeologist writes fantasy, epic fantasy, because the way that an archaeologist would approach a fantasy novel is different than someone who doesn't have that scientific background. So how interesting. And yeah, I didn't know that he was an archaeologist until today.
Oh, I mean, once we feel like that's the thing, like his time scales dwarf even like the Lord of the Rings, because he really is looking at things from like an archaeological point of view. To take that and bring that into a modern day scenario for someone who studies history at that scale, what would he have to say about like the modern human condition? I just couldn't resist the opportunity to read that.
I've been saying for the last 11 episodes that I really wish that we had something more along the lines of the Star Trek future rather than the doom and gloom, dystopian future. So this does have that Star Trek-esque, no more war, no more violence, no more famine. Everybody has an equal opportunity. And I was disappointed in the humanity that this Canadian author has decided for us. But I do understand his point of view. And it was written in 2018, so it's relatively new. It's a relatively new book. A lot has happened since 2018, but some of it I think he foreshadows in this book.
Oh, agreed. And what was interesting is to see how it's aged, even in that short period of time. Like the most obvious one is like our point of view of AI is rapidly changing in relationship to what we were anticipating it might be viewed as. So like just something as simple as that. And without even getting into some of the character analogs, the author like permeates the books with, right? Like he's
Yeah.
got his version of sudden public figures that we're aware of. And so like to see how public opinion has evolved around some of these public figures is interesting to look at in the context of this book.
There's one in particular that he blatantly that is him, and there's nothing different about that blatant analog, right? When you're reading the book, oh, this is the XYZ character. This is supposed to be so-and-so, right? But he does a good enough job of making them just enough different that it's not a complete knockoff. But there's one character, the mogul who owns all the news channels. That guy, I mean, even the name, exactly who he's talking about. So it makes you wonder if Erikson doesn't like this dude at all.
Yeah, it does seem like he has a bit of an axe to grind as it pertains to like media conglomerates and how corporate interests influence perception and news
But as
and
an anthropologist, I totally get where he's coming from, because anthropology is the study of the culture of man. And when you have an organization that is completely influencing the culture of the entire world, as an anthropologist, I can just assume that that wouldn't be something that they would appreciate, that an anthropologist would appreciate. Anyway, Shane, would you like to share your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I'm just listening to you two since I just finished the book. Really, I just got done listening to it not more than 30 minutes ago.
Do we, audience, do we have a theme here where Shane finishes the book the day of the
Well, I
interview?
got a lot of things going on. So, I mean, if it wasn't for audiobooks, I'd never finish these things. Um, so yeah, I mean, the book actually is kind of like, okay, if we're gonna do a Star Trek thing, it's kind of like at the end, well, let's just call it Starfleet and be done with it.
Yeah,
You know?
there's spoil. You're okay with spoilers. We have spoilers.
Yeah. So that was interesting. And so we know where the author's head's at, relating to basically political figures and news outlets. And, you know, I kind of like looked at this book like, if we had a if we the aliens that showed up was kind of like the genie. So the genie started giving, it's like they start saying basically, the gifts, his gifts, the AI's gifts, or the aliens gift. ET, they called it ET. So he did a good job of giving good metaphors so that he didn't have to explain everything about everything, so he could get to the story. And that's what I kind of liked about the book, is because we get a lot of books, in the previous one, that you almost need a dictionary to freaking get through. And I didn't need a dictionary to get through this one. This was kind of like very kind of just like sit back, watch the show, watch the movie kind of thing. And there was enough metaphors that you could kind of like easily walk through it. And that way you're more concentrated of where the story's going. I'm kind of like looking at the book as A, is it easy to follow compared to the other ones we were listening. It was kind of refreshing because the last couple of books were brain, getters. And this one was more, they had a good flow. What I got from it was basically, it was a wish list. It was basically, what happened if all the hunger went away? What happened if all the anger? And I think where he was going to was basically, what would you do with all this free time if you didn't have to hate, find food, do this, do that, whatever? It's like John Adams, where he said, we worked, we do this, we built this government, this for our grandchildren, our great grandchildren can become artists, musicians, and so on, because you need free time to create art. You need free time to basically study humanity. If you're always going to be searching for your food, and that's what, if you look at our history, the more we civilize is the more, if we have, humans have more free time. And people think that's the opposite. It's just like, well, people, they need to keep busy. That's true. But if you follow John Adams and this author's kind of way of thinking, is that basically, well, that free time is going to be more toward creative purposes. And then you have your naysayers, which is part of the book as well, is because they're always trying to control it. The newspaper or the world leaders, the Chinese leaders, the only ones saying, let's go with the flow here. Okay. Because we're not going to be able to stop this. And the more that we go on the flow here, the faster we're going to get ahead of everybody, kind of thing, which is true. And so it's like, uh, uh, the Admiral said, is that we were our worst enemy in the book because we kept on trying to get in the way of trying to control something. As an artist, and Patrick, you probably know this as well because you're an artist as well, is that your worst enemy is you, because you have self-doubt and you're always trying to correct that self-doubt, and instead of just going where the art's going to take you, kind of thing. So he's on Mars, or the end of it, spoiler, but that's the teaser, is basically because there's ruins on the moon, there's ruins on Mars, and the big bad governments or whatever it is didn't let us know it because they wanted to control the information again. I think what we're going to on this book is that, let's say, with everything was known, nothing was a secret. All right. And let's put humans in that scenario. What's going to happen? Now, they can't hurt each other. They can't kill each other. They can't starve each other. All right. But now they have all this information. All right. And they have to use it for a positive kind of area. But also, there is another enemy that they want you to, the aliens want you to go hunt down and kill. So I don't know. There's that scenario as well. So that's where I'm at with this book.
Yeah, that's why I don't know if the AI is benevolent. I don't think it is.
I don't think you're supposed to know.
As the person who isn't an artist in this scenario, I would like to just postulate that when you don't have to worry about feeding yourself or where you're going to live or are you going to have enough money to pay for the heat, you are freed up to create. And so I think in this utopian society, if they can get past their own, if we as humanity can get out of our own way, that is when the art and the science and everything just explodes, because when you don't have to worry about where is my next meal going to come from, you are free to create. It doesn't matter what you're creating, you can create anything.
That brain energy is going somewhere else. And if it's not going to hate,
Mm-hmm.
if it's not going to self-destruction, and it's not trying to control your neighbor.
Yeah.
Then
Imagine if all the brilliant scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project, all of those brilliant minds from all over the world who came together to work on the Manhattan Project, imagine if they worked on creating energy that was sustainable for everyone rather than a weapon.
Agreed. I mean, one thing I would say, as as a career artist, right, a career long graphic designer, freelance artist, and now comic creator, there's this dynamic that every creator kind of has to face, right? And you touched on it in terms of like, where's my food gonna come from, but also like the choices one makes so that their art, their creation can be marketable, can be sold, like the calculations in terms of like, what is my audience? What's the audience that I want to read my comic, let's say? And so that's always in the equation, right? And so like in this book, we're taking a look specifically at what if the profit margin was just eliminated? What if that, not just the scarcity, right? The need to eat, but what if you didn't have to consider marketability? You didn't have to consider markets and, the paying of rent. If you didn't have to have that just on your mind, what would you occupy your thoughts with, And I think he does that so well in the sense of like structurally, this book chronicles the first contact, right? But it just moves across a variety of point of view, all over the planet. So you're getting science fiction writers coping with it, and then you're getting, would-be bank robbers and, child soldiers, each, with their own point of view.
Battered
Posting.
wives, drunks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Abusive
Because,
husbands. I mean, he really does not shy away from any potential character flaw to just really show how different people cope with what he calls an intervention event, right? So that's, I think,
Again, that's the anthropologist. The
yeah,
human condition. I found myself drawn to certain characters. This is very much a character-driven book. The science is just sort of, it just magically appears. Like my favorite part is when they're on their trek to Malali and food and fuel just magically shows up on the road. They don't have to worry. They just have something to eat, right? Even cigarettes and alcohol just show up. And alcohol and cigarettes are fine because disease is cured, and that includes alcoholism, right? So
right. Well,
if
the
you want to
alcohol
drink,
doesn't have that
you don't
effect
get
anymore.
drunk anymore. It just tastes
Yeah.
good, right?
So it becomes because the reason why you took it becomes obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the main character kept on telling the AI is that basically, okay, you're doing all this stuff, but humans are a violent creature and they're going to have all this pinned up. hence the grace. So as the side, I don't know this author. I don't know
Mhm.
his previous works. I don't know how he kind of like lays out books or anything like that, or storylines. So this benevolent AI, like Admiral said, is that could obviously be like, you know, the worst freaking manipulative thing on, you know, that ever happened to Earth. But also, this reminds me of Joshua what's his last name?
Dalzell.
Joshua Dalzell's Black Fleet book, where basically the Phage was attacking Earth, and the alien race that created the phage got out of the bag, you could say, so they had to control the phage, so they got the humans to kill the phage because they were pacifists. So we have an AI who's a
Yeah.
pacifist,
Yeah.
and he needs basically an attack dog to go after the Greys and some
Yeah.
other aliens, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I don't think he's
so
really benevolent.
yeah. So this is not a somewhat of a new idea of basically of a mysterious AI that's, well, I think that was in Star Trek too. There was an episode of Star Trek,
You
wasn't it?
know, it happens on Earth. There are countries that don't have their own army, and so they somehow get
Mercenaries,
another
yeah,
army to fight their war for them.
right. So I don't know. You tell us about how you read his other works, right? His other
Yes.
stuff. So what
Um,
is usually what is his usually how he works? How does he do storylines?
he writes longhand. He still writes with a pen and paper. And
Wow.
like he to when he describes his writing process, he really focuses a lot on the theme, and then he builds out like characters and events to reinforce like the central theme he's got in mind. So he has another book series which I suspect you two might enjoy. It's called Willful Child, and it's a comedy series that is basically a lampoon of the 1960s Star Trek TV series.
Huh.
And
Kind of a
so,
Galaxy Quest scenario got going here
yeah, or maybe a little bit of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the
to
Galaxy
the galaxy.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So I mean, I think he has that series where he could like indulge his humor, because he is a really darkly this book is written almost like an HBO series or something. It's very like plain speak and on the ground, whereas his fantasy books, really like intricate prose. Like, big recommendation, a book that I reread regularly because it's so well crafted. You can kind of come back and find new things. You know,
uh,
he did that across 10 enormous books. So for him to just distill his style down to one book and just dispense with fancy prose to give us like plain conversations.
right.
And about this book, it came to him, in like one of those like those passions, right? Where you're like inspired and you just,
Right.
it comes fully formed. So that's how he described, and it kind of makes sense because it's like a distillation of his whole quest is, get people to look at themselves, right? Get people to look at society, and to like dispense with the easy answer of this is a good guy and this is a bad guy, right? Like, I think he
Right.
does that really well because he takes one of the characters in Rejoice is a child soldier who has grown up, and he's now just another killer who has to cope with his past
Right.
in this new paradigm. But then to hear what you're saying about like what if, because it's not spelled out in black and white, like, is this the character that we should be looking at and all of humanity? Like, this is the origin story of a species of child soldiers who have just been recruited to go out into space to fight another
Right.
war. So there's like
Right.
the potential dark side, or there's the potential light side where this is the secret origin of Starfleet. Like they are
Right.
giving
Right.
the
Right.
technology to
Because
get.
because the Musk character,
Yeah.
okay, who is a South African, but he's actually black in the character.
He's not South
And
African. He's
I thought
African,
he
but
was South African.
I don't think so.
Any,
But he is from
anyway,
Africa.
so that that's what kind of like, oh, okay. is that he went to Mars, and it was the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went to Mars because he wanted to go investigate it himself. Okay. He didn't want nothing tainting it. He wanted a Earth ship with his carrot, with his pieces. Oh, it's going to take 3 weeks to get there. He says, a month ago, 3 weeks would be amazing, would be a miracle. All right. But now we have these new, that's the thing is the above, benevolent or the gift,
The
one of the
AI,
biggest
yeah.
AI gifts, or they call them ET,
Yeah.
gift was that basically this power source out of nowhere, this magical power source. Okay, so now they have this magical power source. They don't need oil. They don't need any other stuff. So anyway, they can put it in their rockets. So this Musk guy or this Musk character kind of thing wants to go to Mars himself. He wants to investigate because he doesn't want nothing tainting it. He wants to see it. He doesn't need the AI influence. He doesn't need the American influence. He doesn't need the Chinese influence. He wants to go investigate himself. He takes 2 astronauts that were supposed to go on the spaceship to shake hands with the AI, but that failed. So he takes these 2 guys. Okay. So you got this character set. That's what I'm trying to get to
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the book. That's going to investigate Mars's ruins. So that leads you to the second book, whatever the second book would be.
There's no second book.
Yeah. So this first book was
It's
actually
like ultimate cliffhanger.
Yeah. In this book, and then you have Adam, who is the main AI, talk to this little child. That was the very end. I just got done listening to that one. And so you have all these, and then you have what was her name? What's the main character's name? Susan? Not Susan. Sarah?
Oh, I'm completely forgetting her
I just
name.
remember she's being redhead now.
She's she's a
The science fiction author.
science fiction author from Canada. But
Main character Sarah? No, Susan, Sarah.
it's
Oh my god.
I know I've completely forgotten it as well. How
Oh
crazy,
wow.
'cause it's a specific, because it's kind of like it's a very character name, right? She's got her first name and her last name kind of
Oh my
create
gosh, that is so
something.
funny. We don't even remember the main character.
Well, that's the thing, because in a way, I mean, even though she is like a significant character, there are so many characters that we touch on throughout the book, right? But like her
Yeah.
role is that of like
Samantha August.
Samantha. Sam. That's what it was. Sam.
right. So
Oh,
she's
anyway.
almost like the author insert, right? A
Yeah.
Canadian science
Right.
fiction author
Right.
telling it like it is.
But she
And
has her own bird of prey she's running around with it, with her own AI and her husband, in tow. And so you have all this at the end. So basically, I look at this first book as really setting the stage.
Yeah, but he
Okay.
didn't write a sequel.
I thought there was 2 books on this one.
There's no sequel.
there's no sequel. I mean, it might be in his notebook somewhere. We can only
That's
hope.
true. That's true.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it ends with an ultimate cliffhanger.
Maybe he wants to see if the Earth, or literally the Earth, blows up. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
But-
maybe after he released it, he realized that the world, that the characters that he created in 2018, the world had a much different idea of who this African billionaire genius character was the analog for. The way that we look at that person now is much different than we did in 2018. So, yeah, he didn't. That didn't age
a lot
well.
of other things.
That part of the book didn't age well.
No,
and yet
America didn't age well either.
well, I mean, what's interesting about like that particular detail is the choice of not writing the specific person and not writing a fictionalized version, but to kind of make an analogous character. And so the choice of that character being, African, like embeds the character with so much other potential, like point of view that we don't really ever get to look at. We don't really get to see what that character's like political views actually are, but we can just
Right.
infer that he's got a certain set of different priorities just by, the implication of his background, which I think is, I don't know. I mean, I think that's something that comes through in a lot of the characters. You get a very short amount of time with them, but he seems to give
Right.
enough that you can kind of at least get a sense of where they're coming from and then where they might be going. Almost any other book can be read as like the sequel to this, right? We can almost look at Starship Troopers and say, oh,
Right.
that
Right. Right.
is
Right.
only
Oh,
absolutely.
100 years from this book,
Right.
you know?
yeah.
Right.
Because this
So
explains where the technology came from.
Yes, but it's left for us to decide. Right?
Yeah.
he did a good job by keeping everybody separate when he was writing it. So you knew exactly who he was talking about. So each chapter was like, okay, they're in China now, or that's China. Okay, now that's the American leader. Okay, and there's a lot of books that you get involved. It's just like they cross they so much that it's just like, what am I listening to again, or what am I reading again? So he does a really good job story structure of keeping it, where you can go like this, because there's a lot of moving parts here.
It's
You
almost
know,
as if he wrote the book for audio,
almost. Well, in his head,
which in 2025, if you are an author and you're not writing books for audio, you're missing out on opportunity. Because
yeah,
I mean, I listen with
yeah,
I read books with my ears, and I have for almost 2 decades. I can't remember.
yeah,
Well, I do remember the last time I read a book. It was one of the Outlander books. You know, for the most part, I listen. It was during a hurricane, and we didn't have power for 6 days, and so this was when we lived in Texas. I read a couple of Outlander books, which are like 600 pages during the hurricane, because I didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah. Well, so Erickson's fantasy novels are about 1,000 pages each book.
Yeah,
So I mean, they're door stoppers. Um, but yeah, the audio experience was a great one for this. And I'm also like, I like to say that I need to save my eyes for when I'm drawing cartoons, and
yeah.
so
right.
audiobooks while I'm walking the dog is like such a perfect combo.
Yeah, or
Um,
folding laundry. So, Patrick, what was your favorite themes from the book?
I mean, I just did finish a reread to refresh myself for this conversation. When I heard the line in the book, which was the title of the book, right? Rejoice and Knife. Like rejoice wasn't in the book, but when he describes what it means, a knife through the heart, like that the necessity to accept what's happened so that you can move on, right? Like that's so, I mean, in a way it's gotten more salient now, right? And since that it's been written, that need for like everyone to kind of like do a quick assessment and see what they could let go of to make space for the new. I
Hmm.
think that really struck me. And just the whole like despite all of the different characters, right? That same motivating need to like get to that to a similar human core, like that that I don't think I would get tired of that. Like that sense of like because, humans come in such a variety, but then to kind of peel that away and to look at like the fundamental needs that shape us and then the fundamental, phenomenon that, move us in one direction, that turn us into a creative, or to turn us into a nurturer, or turn us into like a bad person, right? Like we all start with as the similar lump of clay, but then we're shaped. And so I think that messaging like really came
Yeah,
through in the
yeah,
sense that it wasn't like, you know, the divine spark and now we're all elves and elves are always perfect.
right, right.
It's it was like showing like in our messiness, we're still like there's still the chance to do more.
There was one character who was a drug runner. He sold weapons, right? And when weapons become obsolete, he loses his livelihood, and he completely changes. He morphs into a different person. I mean, at the end of the book, he is a much different person than he is at the beginning. He actually has space in his heart for a romantic partner by the end of the book, which he never even would have considered it at the beginning of the book. I think my favorite part was how all of the different religions came together and went on a trek to the same location, regardless of what religion it was. They wanted to get to this place together. and they wanted to be together. Again, I don't know whether or not this place that they were going to had nefarious means, because I'm still
Yeah,
not sure whether or not
yeah,
ET is benevolent.
yeah. You may be in a body snatcher scenario going there. The
But religion became
oh,
irrelevant.
but the thing also, let's not forget there was a lot of suicides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there
Yeah.
was a lot. I mean, that was like prevalent, like through the whole middle of the book until they start dying. I mean, still basically, people got a handle on it. But since so you couldn't hurt anybody.
But you could hurt yourself.
The AI or the ET, as they called them,
Adam.
had this kind of like dome around Earth that basically you couldn't, if people didn't know, they couldn't harm each other. But you could harm yourself, so you could still kill yourself. The thing was, is that he actually spent some time on that. And that thought was in his head when he was writing it, is that, okay, what do you do with these people that basically, their whole world was about, you know, um, this, that, whatever the cult was, and that was wiped off. Could these people deal with it? And could people deal with it? And so he decided that basically, which is right, that a percentage of the population of humans wouldn't be able to deal with it. And so they started offing themselves. I think there was a mention of basically some drug addicts couldn't deal without being on drugs. And then the ones that did get off drugs, alcohol, whatever, and did beat their wife and kids and whatever, that basically they had time. All this was gone. All that was gone. So they had time to remorse and figure out like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I did this. So he did touch on that, because when humans, I think we're at the same theme, is that the alien AI ET guy took away all this aggression, and what was left was this self look at. And if you think about it, that's population wise, it's usually that's the case. You have, and if he's an archaeologist, I'm sure he's seen this over and over and over and over and over in his studies, where basically you have 1/3 that's just want to hang back, and that's what we're dealing with now. Okay, is 1/3 of the population who wants to hang back on a fictitious thing that doesn't exist. All right, and wants to control everything. All right, you have the middle person, or the middle group of civilization, that just literally just, they're just feeding their kids, they're getting with problems, we really don't know if we're going backwards or forwards, kind of thing. And then you have the other 1/3 that basically, yeah, let's do the Star Trek thing, let's go. So you have this human train, and I think the saying is, your army goes as fast as the last soldier that can walk. I think he was taking a snapshot of current events, because that's how I feel like we're now. I feel literally like we're now, is that we have 1/3 of the population wants to stay in the 1900s. And then we have this other population, 1/3 of the population, that's just trying to pay their bills and raise their kids. And the other 1/3 population that says, where's my flying car? All right.
Or jetpack,
Where's my
right?
Star Trek? We could easily feed everybody. What is the problem here?
Yeah.
All right. And so this book really does that. And it creates this fourth element, this AI, that basically says, okay, we're going to get rid of all that. We're going to go that way. And then you put the ruins on the planets, which is basically interesting. I'm kind of like disappointed that this is not a second book.
Write it in your head. I want to go back to the whole because I said that religion became irrelevant, but that doesn't mean that spirituality became irrelevant. I want to make sure because religion is a fake construct and spirituality is not. I just wanted to make sure I covered that.
And there are a few sequences where like there's a sequence where like some new churches take shape, right? And some of those churches are justifying the mass suicides.
Right.
Other churches are being very technophobic, right? They're being Luddites and are saying don't take any of the gifts that the ETs are offering.
That's right. That was the guy. It was the guy who was like the reporter and the evangelist, and basically the evangelist is space is Satan. So
Yeah.
it is the Satan's playground. And I'm going, yeah, that's about right. That's how that would work. That's exactly how that would work.
Yeah. And
Now,
so, he
and then
just,
they would ask for donations.
yeah, I mean, well, the reporter reveals that, oh, you still have oil interests. I noticed, but yeah, the
Right,
beauty of like
right.
how efficiently he just takes like he like dips into like a specific point of view and say, okay, well, this specific subculture maybe will look at it and through this lens, and then he'll just find a couple of characters to talk about, like the whole concept of the the kids who tried to rob a bank on the day of the intervention, and
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
for a second it's going to be like a Quentin Tarantino shootout,
yeah.
but
Right, right,
none
right,
of the bullets
right.
go anywhere, and so it's just like, what do they do now? And then it just like begs the question, like, well, could that person just walk out of the prison because no one's going to be able to stop them? Like what are the protocols? Like, how far can
Yeah.
someone exploit those interventions? But they don't know, right? Like, for so long they're in
In
ignorance.
other words, is the murderer really going to do anything anymore because he can't murder? So why is he in prison? He has no power. One thing I want to we're skipping the whole thing. The most important thing about this book, okay? The Greys, okay?
Uh,
This this alien race, and for some reason, Stargate. Every author, it's like the Borg. All right, is the Greys, and the Greys are these aliens that everybody knows in their head, with the big eyes, and they're gray. And they're in Stargate, and I forgot if they were in another freaking book
They're
or
in
whatever.
Resident Alien. I mean, they're
Yeah.
it's the
Oh, they're
beginning,
even in South Park.
which makes me kind of think, maybe these gray aliens are real.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe somebody's getting us prepared to see these gray aliens. But the gray aliens were basically in the book as the nomad space race that did their experiments on humans and had secret tunnels on the moon. That's why I'm saying it has a lot of stuff in it, but the author keeps it all together so you can follow it. But the Greys, I'm gonna say the Greys. I mean, it's just like I kind of like the Greys. Really, they're called the Greys. Oh God, this is the go-to for all aliens, right? This is what we're going for.
But what I love about it is that the Greys are the excuse for all the reasons why we didn't go back to the moon, why all the things that we didn't
Right,
do
right.
that we could have done. I mean, basically the space race stopped in the 70s when we could have kept going, right? We could have kept
He
going.
did make that a point a lot. He did
Yeah,
that. He
but he
did
blamed it on the
basically,
Greys.
yeah,
So
yeah. But
we need to wrap up. So I would love to give Patrick an opportunity to share a little bit about your upcoming comic book and your other books.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I'm a career-long artist. For many years, I was the art director for Kung Fu magazine, right? It's a fairly iconic magazine. When I started, it was a little black and white thing. And then, by the time the magazine stopped its physical publication, it's still online, but the pandemic, put an end to the magazine. Who buys magazines anymore, right? So that's what moved me to take all of my back burner projects and go put them on the front burner, and that resulted in some children's books and a couple of graphic novels. The graphic novel that I'm most well known for is called A Tiger's Tale. And so you can imagine that as the Jungle Book meets Enter the Dragon. So there's a little bit of there's talking animals and there's martial arts in it. And so my latest project is a comic book rather than a graphic novel, because I kind of want to give something to the local comic book shops. And that's a
uh-huh.
comic that's called Undead Kung Fu Ghost Killer. And it's like an issue one, classic, issue one. Think of that book as Night of the Living Dead versus Kung Fu Hustle. Wow.
Sounds fun.
And it
When,
I'm pleased with it.
when authors and artists always always tell of their graphic novels or whatever they're working on, right? I always think of basically Bob's Burgers. What's the oldest daughter's name?
Tina
Yeah.
Belcher.
Tina Belcher, and her graphic novels of romance zombie.
The zombie romance novels.
Zombie romance, right? Because it's like, yeah, that's what you got to do when you do these novels and stuff like that. You can't hold anything back. Perfect,
Yeah, you
boom.
got, yeah,
You know,
I love it.
Yeah, so rather than romance, it's martial arts, right? So it's
Yeah.
right,
Which,
basically
you know, your background with Kung Fu Magazine is,
I mean, it was a cornerstone of my life and my career. And you know, even though I've been a comic artist since the 90s, you know, working for a magazine full time took a lot of that time, right, to work on the magazine. But, you know, the art I've laid out hundreds of thousands of articles that you can imagine them, the how to defend yourself when you're on a street corner, how to defend yourself against multiple
right,
assailants. I've laid
right,
out so many of those articles that allowed me to continue practicing my comic storytelling because I
yeah,
had all of these kind of fight scenes that were presented to me. You know, this article is about how to use a sword. And so I would get all of that sequential photos and lay out the article, but all of that work kind of translated to
right,
comics because then I could like now I could draw my comics and like really lean into like my understanding of martial arts to kind of deliver some fun and crazy fight
right.
scene.
mm,
And so that's what Undead Kung Fu Ghost Killer is about, you know, an undead warrior fighting more undead monster because all hell broke loose that one night.
I think that's why you like this author a lot, is because he's using his archaeology, his second rail, you could say,
Yeah.
as food or inspiration for his work. Just like you use basically all the other stuff for basically your new novel, is that more information you had this other information and you pulled from that and you're turning it around with your own spin on it, with your own novel on it. It's kind of like it's material, it's
Agreed.
material.
Yeah, and I mean the beauty of comics is that you can do things, you know, that you can't do in other medium because of the, you know,
Right,
if I can't describe it, I could draw it, or maybe just the
right,
drawing is enough, and then just, you know, maybe a sound effect or something. So there are things that can be played with in a comic that I mean that makes comics unique. You know, even though, you know, we've
right.
seen plenty of comic characters on movies, there's still like a bit of a difference. I
It lacks. It lacks. You see that stuff on the movies and the theaters. That you only got about an hour to 2 hours to tell a story.
Mhm.
You saw this in the '90s a lot. In the beginning of the 2000s, they really, those writers leaned heavily on the special effects stuff, and they really forgot how to tell a story. Uh, um, you know, so what books or comic books or graphic novels does is allows you to you got more canvas to play with, you know, and more time to play with it. That's why I think sci-fi books, in my opinion, I think sci-fi books are really, I don't know, you probably do more Comic Cons than it, probably, right? You do Comic Cons, right?
I have. I just
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, you tell us, are people like craving stories? Are they craving, good stories instead of just the regular pew pews? Because I think that's a topic on this podcast,
I
really.
mean, I think so. I think it's just I mean, to touch back on the book, right? The profit margin is such a factor. You know, like one of the things that like in the past couple of years, like one of the significant learning curves I had to engage in when I transitioned from like graphic designer at a magazine to comic book author, graphic novelist, was really trying to understand like who are these stories for? You know, like I kind of try and write for younger readers because comics are for kids again, you know? Like there was a period where
Hmm.
comics did not want to be for kids, but now it's like a critical role in trying to get literacy numbers back up is getting kids to read comics. You
Right.
know? And so part of it was just to understand like what's my like who do I want to tell stories for, and then what's the, you know, what can I do to get them, you know, to get them to understand that, hey, if you like Kung Fu Hustle, if you like, you know, zombies, then check out this comic because I've done something unique in how I put them all together, right? That's like
Right.
I'm striving. So there's a lot of other creators that I've met who are like that, who are like taking something and trying to go further because it's, you know, we live in a postmodern world. It's hard to do anything original, but what you can do is something that's genuine, right? If you can do something that speaks from your core to communicate to
Um,
somebody else's core, then it doesn't matter if it's been done before because it's still,
right.
you know, like that personal
I mean,
connection.
it's kind of like Firefly, all right?
Hmm.
That storyline has been written so many times, but it's the characters that you like to go see, all right? And so, oh, how many times have we seen sci-fi shows come out where basically they try to overdo the freaking the one words, the quick jokes, you know, something like Captain Kirk and Spock with William Shatner and McCoy kind of thing. All right. And they go, oh, we got to do that. We got to do that. And it's just like, no, you don't understand. There's only one William Shatner here. You can't redo this. All right. You can try, but it's not going to happen. All right. And so it's kind of like Firefly. They're not going to be able to redo that thing. All right. Because it was the characters, it was the actors, it was the writers at that time that really made that same story over and over. A bunch of misfits in a ship or car or van or whatever, traveling adventures.
For comics, especially for indie comics, that's like I'm the whole cast, right? I'm the writer, I'm the director, I'm the cinematographer, I'm the special effects guy. I'm, you know, I'm
Yeah.
the gopher getting the drinks, you know, and so that's the case with a lot of like, especially like independently produced comics and independently produced graphic novels, which can only be done on something like a Kickstarter, right? On a platform where you could like make your case to the reader, and then they could decide if they want to, you know, oh, I like that idea, I like where this guy's coming from, I'll support the project, you know, as compared to say, a comic writer who wants to do the next X-Men story, you know, like, sure, I have an
Yeah.
X-Men story in me, but I understand that that story will probably never see print, even if I got the job of writing X-Men, because there are corporate interests
Yeah.
involved. There's X-Men
Yeah.
movies in the future. There's editors, etc. All
Yeah.
of those constraints that we've been talking
Yeah.
about within the
Yeah.
context of the book, right?
And
It's a it's a
you have to
real
stay
thing.
in the right story. You can't make anything up or go in a different direction with the X-Men because they have a path that they're already on. I want to make a point. There is a mall here in our town that all of the anchors except for one have left. However, there is a comic book store inside of this mall. And that comic book store is so successful that it recently took over the space that was occupied by Bed Bath and Beyond. It is huge. And it is the only thing that is keeping this mall open. Right now, comic books, they're saving communities. So thank you for being a comic book artist.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you. It's, you know, it's one of the few things I do well enough to keep doing, right? So if not that, I don't know, what would I do? Enter politics? Oh my God. Uh,
All right. Patrick, I want to give you the last word on the book. Who should read Rejoice a Knife to the Heart?
anyone who's seen a science fiction movie who likes to read, you know, like the book like plugs in so well to what we've all already kind of read in our various interests. And so, and then it's written in such a way that it can function as like the secret prequel to some of your favorite sci-fi. And it can also be like a distillation of like a specific author's message, right? And so if you like that message, if you like how that message is conveyed, then this author has a whole other, you know, body of work that you could dive into. And, you know, and being an independent creator, to me, the creator has become as important as the creation because, you know, in a world of AI and, you know,
Right.
generative slop, right? Being able to
Right.
see that, oh, this is the person who created it, and then you can
Right.
kind of infer why, just enriches that experience, right? So so yeah, it's a short book. It's well read, and I think, and it might even bring a tear to your eye.
All right. That is a wrap on this episode. I've been Space Admiral Candace.
I'm Space Cadet Shane, second class.
And I'm Patrick Lugo. You can find me at plugoarts.com.
And you have been listening to Sci-Fi Book Pod.